Airports aren't usually thrilling. Delays, luggage, and long lines. But in 1970, one movie transformed the everyday grind of air travel into a high-stakes spectacle. Airport launched the golden era of the disaster film. From manufactured blizzards to unexpected setbacks, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts and prepare for takeoff. Here are 20 shocking facts about Airport. Number 1, a bestseller born from real-life tragedy. Airport wasn't just dreamed up in Hollywood. It was rooted in a real-life nightmare. Arthur Hailey's 1968 novel, The Foundation for the film, drew direct inspiration from the tragic crash of Continental Airlines Flight 11 in 1962. That night, a passenger named Thomas Doty smuggled dynamite onto the plane, hoping to stage his own death for insurance fraud. He'd taken out $150,000 in coverage, expecting to leave his wife and young daughter financially secure. Instead, the bomb ripped the aircraft apart over Missouri, killing all 45 people on board. Investigators ruled it a suicide, voiding his policy and denying his family the payout. The horror of that event shocked America and exposed the dark side of air travel. Hailey seized on that public fear, transforming it into a best-selling novel and later, the star-studded blockbuster that launched the golden age of disaster films. Number 2. Guerrero's entire character was rewritten. In Arthur Hailey's novel, the bomber Guerrero is a shadowy figure. You never even learn his first name. That little detail, Dom, came straight from the movie script. When his wife Enz calls him that in the coffee shop, it wasn't from the book. It was Hollywood filling in the blanks. But here's where things get interesting. Hailey's novel wasn't just about a ticking bomb. It dove deep into the real struggles behind aviation, like the crushing mental stress air traffic controllers faced, and the shady travel insurance booths conveniently placed near ticket counters. Airlines and insurers cashed in, exploiting travelers' fear of flying. These social critiques gave the book a sharp edge. But when the cameras rolled, most of that was stripped away. The filmmakers wanted spectacle, not lectures. So Guerrero got a first name, but the hard truths about aviation stayed locked in the pages. Number 3, the doomed star of the skies. For all the big-budget gloss, Airport had just one real airplane pulling the heavy load. The star? A Boeing 707 with tail number N324F, borrowed from the Flying Tiger line. The production dressed it up with flashy Global Airlines logos, turning an everyday cargo hauler into a silver screen celebrity. But here's where the story nosedives, literally. Years later, this same jet met a grim fate. On March 21, 1989, while flying as Trans-Brazil Flight 801 into Sao Paulo, it crashed short of the runway. 3 crew members were lost, along with 22 unlucky people on the ground whose homes became the crash site. Dark as that ending is, you almost want to imagine the plane looking back and saying, "Hey, at least I had my Hollywood close-up." Because for one shining moment, that 707 wasn't hauling boxes, it was carrying a blockbuster. Number 4, Global Airlines was fake, yet it became Hollywood's favorite airline. Airport invented Global Airlines out of thin air, a made-up carrier meant to look just real enough to pass on screen. The logo was painted on the Boeing 707, splashed across tickets, coffee cups, even uniforms. Instead of fading away after filming, Global found an unlikely second life. The studio recycled it, and suddenly the airline that never existed was moonlighting in other Universal projects, popping up in the sci-fi thriller The Andromeda Strain, and even on the hit TV series Ironside. Global became Hollywood's generic airline, a background player that refused to retire. In fact, it probably had a steadier career than some real actors. Who knew the most reliable airline in show business was completely fictional? Number 5, a real blizzard inspired the story, but the movie had to fake the snow. Arthur Hailey's Airport novel drew heavy inspiration from the brutal 1967 Chicago snowstorm that dumped a staggering 23 inches of snow and paralyzed O'Hare International Airport. That real disaster gave the book its grit and realism. Naturally, the filmmakers wanted the same wintry punch on screen, so they packed up and headed to Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, a location practically guaranteed to deliver snow. Except, plot twist, it didn't. That winter turned out to be unusually mild, leaving the runways bare. Instead of Mother Nature, the production team had to rely on Hollywood's favorite backup plan: tons of fake snow. Crews spread it everywhere to keep up the illusion of a blizzard. So while the movie sold us whiteouts and bitter cold, the reality on set was closer to a dry Minnesota autumn. The storm that inspired the story never actually showed up for filming. Number 6. Burt Lancaster cashed in, then trashed the movie. Burt Lancaster may have had his name above the title in Airport, but make no mistake, he wasn't there out of love for the script. His contract was pure gold, a hefty paycheck plus a slice of the profits, which ultimately lined his pockets handsomely. Yet, despite raking in the cash, Lancaster had nothing kind to say about the film itself. He flat out branded it the worst piece of junk ever made. In interviews, he admitted the only reason he signed on was leverage. Universal agreed to finance his passion projects in return. To him, Airport wasn't art, it was a bargaining chip. He even laughed off the fact that the film snagged award nominations, calling the whole thing a bad joke. So, while audiences bought into the high drama, Lancaster was busy counting his money and privately rolling his eyes. Number 7. Dean Martin was so terrified of flying. He took a train to the set. On screen, Dean Martin looked every bit the confident airline captain in Airport. Off screen, he wouldn't go near a plane. Martin had a serious fear of flying, so serious that when production moved to Minneapolis, he skipped the skies entirely and took a train to set. His aerophobia even became a running joke with his Rat Pack buddy Frank Sinatra, who loved to tease him by playing on that anxiety. And he wasn't alone. Maureen Stapleton, who gave a powerhouse performance as the bomber's wife, also hated flying. She traveled exclusively by trains or ships, and she wouldn't even step into an elevator. The irony: in Airport, both actors are surrounded by turbulence, jet engines, and sky-high stakes. Yet in real life, their feet and nerves stayed firmly on the ground. Sometimes Hollywood's biggest flight risks are the ones not boarding at all. Number 8. Alfred Newman's final score came with a posthumous Oscar nomination. Airport wasn't just another project in Hollywood's long line of disaster films, it became the swan song of one of cinema's greatest composers. Alfred Newman, the legendary musician behind countless classics, was in failing health during production. He was too weak to even conduct his own score, so the recording sessions were handled by Stanley Wilson. Tragically, Newman passed away before the film ever reached theaters, but his work didn't go unnoticed. He was honored with his 45th Academy Award nomination, making him the most nominated composer in history at the time, a record that stood unchallenged until John Williams finally surpassed it in 2011. And if Newman's name doesn't instantly ring a bell, his music definitely will. He's the man who composed the famous fanfare that plays before every 20th Century Fox movie, meaning his legacy opens one of the most iconic sounds in cinema. Number 9. Director George Seaton fell ill, forcing Henry Hathaway to step in. Disaster didn't just strike on screen during Airport, it hit behind the camera too. Midway through production, director George Seaton, the man steering the entire project, fell seriously ill with pneumonia, leaving Universal in a bind. Rather than halting filming, the studio turned to another Hollywood heavyweight, Henry Hathaway. A veteran director known for classics like True Grit and Niagara, Hathaway stepped in to keep things moving. He was tasked with handling the exterior shots, ensuring production stayed on schedule while Seaton recovered. It was an unusual arrangement, two directors shaping different parts of the same film, but it kept Airport from stalling mid-flight. Once Seaton regained his health, he returned to finish the job. Hathaway's uncredited work meant the disaster film had two captains at the helm, not just 1. Number 10. Universal tried to kill the movie before it took off. The turbulence behind Airport wasn't just creative, it was financial. As production costs ballooned far beyond the original budget, Universal Pictures chairman Lew Wasserman had seen enough. He flat out ordered producer Ross Hunter to shut the film down, fearing it would be a money pit. But Hunter refused to ditch the project. He pressed forward, determined to land the movie safely. Universal, bracing for disaster, rolled it out in multiple markets quickly, convinced they'd need to grab whatever money they could before bad reviews sank it. What happened instead was the exact opposite. Airport didn't crash, it soared, pulling in massive profits and becoming one of Universal's biggest hits. Hunter even bragged that the film's success practically paid the studio's salaries for years. That flex didn't sit well with Wasserman. His grudge ran so deep that he refused to renew Hunter's contract afterward. Now, brace, because we're crash landing the final 10 real weird facts where three icons reach their final destination. But before you fasten your tray table, fly to the subscribe button and take the runway to the like button. Number 11. George Kennedy refused to mock his own legacy. George Kennedy's tough, no-nonsense Joe Patroni became one of the most recognizable characters in Airport, so recognizable that Hollywood came calling again. In 1980, when the disaster film spoof Airplane was gearing up to lampoon the very genre that Airport helped define, Kennedy was offered the chance to parody his own role. Imagine Patroni's gravelly confidence played for laughs in a movie stuffed with absurd gags and deadpan chaos. It could have been comedic gold, but Kennedy flat out refused. To him, Patroni wasn't a punchline. He was a defining role that he wanted to keep intact, not tarnish with satire. Instead, Airplane turned to other actors, leaving Kennedy to continue playing Patroni straight in the Airport sequels. Ironically, his refusal only cemented his image as the franchise's backbone, while Airplane went on to become one of the greatest comedies ever made without him. Number 12. Joe Patroni's swagger came straight from a real mechanic. Joe Patroni, the cigar-chomping tough-as-nails maintenance chief in Airport, wasn't just a Hollywood creation. He was modeled after a real man. The inspiration came from Roy Davis, TWA's longtime director of maintenance, who was rarely seen without his trademark cigar. Davis had dreamed of flying for TWA back in 1942, but when no cockpit seat was offered, he accepted a role as a mechanic instead. That backup plan turned into a legendary career. Davis's contributions to commercial aviation were so significant that the Federal Aviation Administration honored him with a special certificate of recognition. Even after his passing in 1998, his legacy endured. In 1999, he was posthumously inducted into the Arizona Aviation Hall of Fame, forever securing his place in aviation history. Through Patroni, Roy Davis's grit, attitude, and signature cigar lived on in one of cinema's most iconic disaster movie characters. Number 13. Patty Pollson went from serving coffee to Hollywood stardom. Patty Pollson was never chasing fame. She was an American Airlines stewardess flying passengers coast to coast when a beauty contest turned her life upside down. The grand prize wasn't a crown or a modeling contract, it was a role in a Hollywood blockbuster. Just like that, Pollson found herself cast as Joan, one of the flight attendants aboard the Golden Argosy Airport. Picture it. One week she's handing out peanuts, the next she's acting alongside Burt Lancaster and Dean Martin. But here's the interesting part. Her Hollywood career ended as quickly as it began. Airport was her first and only film. After shooting wrapped, she hung up her costume and returned to the skies, with one unforgettable credit forever on her resume. Passengers who later learned her story must have wondered, wait, you were in Airport? Number 14. Universal built a full-size jumbo jet inside a studio. When Airport went into production, Universal didn't settle for half measures. They built an entire Boeing 707 interior so detailed it looked like a real plane ready for takeoff. The massive set was so expensive that the studio refused to tear it down after filming. A few years later, when Airport 1975 came along, they doubled down and built something even bigger, the entire front half of a jumbo jet. Soon, Universal's backlot had its very own indoor airport, nicknamed Stage 747. For decades, this colossal set was reused in movies, TV shows, and commercials, saving the studio millions. Walking inside felt like stepping into a real jetliner, complete with rows of seats and overhead bins. By 2002, though, the Hollywood aircraft was finally scrapped to make room for a workshop. It never flew, but it carried countless productions into cinematic history. Number 15. Boeing's supersonic jet that never actually flew. In the heated scene where Mel Bakersfeld clashes with Commissioner Ackerman about shutting down the airport, eagle-eyed viewers can spot something unusual sitting in the conference room, a sleek model of Boeing's proposed supersonic jet painted in Trans-World Airlines colors. Back in the late 1960s, this futuristic aircraft, often called the SST, was hyped as the next big leap in aviation, meant to rival the Concorde and cut flight times in half. For a moment, it seemed like this needle-nosed plane would revolutionize the skies. But despite all the fanfare, rising costs, environmental concerns, and political pushback doomed the project before a single one was built. The little model in Airport is more than just set dressing, it's a time capsule of aviation's what could have been. Number 16, Airport scored 10 Oscar nominations and a win for Helen Hayes. When Airport premiered in 1970, critics expected it to be a crowd-pleasing disaster flick, but few predicted it would soar so high at the Academy Awards. The film racked up an impressive 10 Oscar nominations, a rare feat for the genre. At the heart of its awards success was legendary actress Helen Hayes, who charmed audiences with her role as the mischievous elderly stowaway. Her performance didn't just win laughs, it earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, making Hayes one of the few performers to win Oscars in both lead and supporting categories during her career. Maureen Stapleton also earned a nod for Supporting Actress, while the film competed for Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Sound, Best Original Score, Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design. For a popcorn movie, Airport made serious Hollywood history. Number 17, Airport became the final curtain call for 3 Hollywood veterans. For all its box office glory, Airport also carries a bittersweet legacy. It was the final feature film for 3 celebrated actors, Van Heflin, Jesse Royce Landis, and Thomas Brown Henry. Each had enjoyed long, respected careers, and their presence lent the film a richness that went beyond its disaster movie thrills. Van Heflin, who played the troubled bomber Guerrero, had been a leading man since the 1940s and even won an Oscar for Johnny Eager. Jesse Royce Landis, remembered for her witty charm opposite Cary Grant in Hitchcock classics, made her graceful exit with Airport. And Thomas Brown Henry, a character actor seen in countless films and TV roles, bowed out here as well. Their contributions made Airport more than spectacle. It became a cinematic farewell. Number 18. Thousands of Minnesotans lined up to be paid extras in Airport. When Airport came to Minnesota in January 1969, the excitement wasn't just on screen, it was in the streets. The Minnesota Employment Service announced they were taking applications for film extras, offering $15 per night plus $3 for a meal break, a decent paycheck at the time for just standing in a crowd. The call attracted thousands. Women applicants were asked to classify themselves with oddly specific labels. Meanwhile, the production secured special permission from the state to ask about race, aiming to stage background crowds that mirrored the diversity of a real airport terminal. For many locals, it was the closest brush with Hollywood they'd ever get, and for a lucky few, it meant stepping into cinematic history, even if just for a fleeting moment in the background. Number 19. Airport crashed the $100 million club. On March 5, 1970, Airport officially took off at the box office, and it didn't just succeed, it soared. The film raked in over $128 million worldwide, a staggering haul for its time. Even more impressive, it became one of only a handful of movies in history up to that point to break the coveted $100 million mark at the North American box office. This elite club included cinematic juggernauts like Gone with the Wind, The Sound of Music, The Graduate, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That meant Airport wasn't just another disaster movie, it was a full-blown cultural event. The mix of star power, spectacle, and high-stakes drama made it one of Universal's biggest moneymakers of the era, cementing its place in Hollywood history as the film that proved audiences would happily line up and pay up for nail-biting thrills in the sky. Number 20. Airport took off, but its sequels lost altitude. After Airport's blockbuster success, Universal wasn't about to let the franchise sit on the runway. the studio launched a string of sequels, each one trying to recapture the lightning of the original but with steadily diminishing returns. First came Airport 1975, released in 1974 despite its title, which managed an impressive $103 million worldwide, riding the wave of disaster movie mania. Then came Airport 77, released in its namesake year, but ticket sales had already started to stall, bringing in just over $90 million. By the time The Concorde, Airport 79, arrived, audiences had largely moved on. Despite its flashy supersonic jet setting, the film earned only $65 million, a steep drop from its predecessors. What began as a groundbreaking box office juggernaut slowly sputtered out, proving that, while the first Airport was a phenomenon, even Hollywood's most ambitious flights can run out of fuel. Bonus fact, inspired a genre boom. When Airport hit theaters in 1970, it didn't just rake in box office gold, it shook Hollywood to its core. The film's nail-biting tension, snowbound runways, and sky-high chaos captured audiences in a way no disaster story had before. Its massive success sparked what would soon be called the Airport disaster craze, turning the skies into a proving ground for drama, heroism, and sheer panic. Suddenly, studios saw the profit in putting ordinary people in extraordinary airborne situations, and a flood of imitators followed. The Poseidon Adventure, The Towering Inferno, and countless other thrillers owe their very existence to the blueprint Airport laid out. Ensemble casts, ticking clock suspense, and high-stakes life-or-death scenarios. In a way, Airport didn't just make Hollywood look up at the sky. It made us all hold our breath, wondering which disaster was coming next. The film wasn't just a hit, it was a revolution. From behind-the-scenes battles to Oscar glory, and from casting calls in Minnesota to models of jets that never actually flew, Airport is far more than just another disaster movie. It was a cultural phenomenon, one that launched a genre, inspired countless imitators, and left its mark on Hollywood history. Though its sequels steadily lost altitude, the original still stands tall as a landmark in blockbuster filmmaking. Half a century later, Airport remains a time capsule of ambition, spectacle, and 1970s star power. And that's why its legacy is still soaring, long after its final flight. So before you taxi out of here, check in on the subscribe button and click the like button for more cinematic turbulence. We'll be cleared for takeoff again in the next video. Until then, keep it real weird.
Wow, that was weird.